It's been almost 2 years since I've been able to see this, but we have a new MCU movie to talk about on the channel. This time we're talking about Black Widow. I was lucky enough, thanks to Disney, for sending me an early screener to check out this movie. A long overdue solo film for the character that people have been petitioning for many, many years. It's finally time to talk about it. So with all that being said, let's do it. Hey, welcome back to the party, everybody. My name is Jaren, and I am so excited, like I said, to talk about Black Widow. But before I get into my thoughts, make sure to comment down below and let me know what you think about the movie, or if you're excited to check it out when it comes to Disney Plus Premiere Access and select theaters July 9th. Natasha Romanoff, aka Black Widow, confronts the darker parts of her ledger when a dangerous conspiracy with ties to her past arises. Pursued by a force that will stop at nothing to bring her down, Natasha must deal with her history as a spy and the broken relationships left in her wake long before she became an Avenger. I've really been itching to be able to check out another Marvel movie just because it's been so long, and I feel like this is going to be the position for many of the fans sitting down to watch this film. We've been waiting for this content to chew on and to be able to sit down and experience in film form in a big screen theater once again, and Black Widow is the movie to do that. This is the film that is kicking off phase 4, and I gotta say, when this movie was announced, I was incredibly skeptical and I wasn't sure if I was going to be on board, just because this is a story that we already know the conclusion to. We already know Natasha Romanoff, aka Black Widow's fate, and so I was wondering, is there anything that this film can do to provide more context to her story or more depth to her character to maybe make me feel more attached to her than I already was before? Because this is something that so many people have been wanting for so long, a Black Widow solo movie. All these other characters get it. She is such a prominent figure in the universe. Why did it take her this long to get one? But it's finally here, and I gotta say, it's a pretty good movie. I really enjoyed it. I think it does a lot to set up this spy espionage thriller genre filmmaking that we haven't seen since Captain America Winter Soldier. It definitely has a lot of that same stylistic approach injected into the veins of the film through the great action sequences that are huge, very bombastic, but still keeping it very simplistic and maintaining relevant within the story. It also has that mystery element to it. In fact, there's something here about this film that is much darker and unlike anything we've ever seen out of all the other Marvel Cinematic Universe films, that I love the fact they're exploring this. It's new territory. There's something about the movie that somehow feels more cinematic, more of an independent film when it comes to the approach. I think that director Cate Shortland was a perfect person to get on this project. I'm not familiar with any of her previous work, but I know that she was able to take that similar Marvel format and formula used for most of their films and sort of flip it on its head. Take all those pieces and include all that necessary things that make a Marvel movie, but still give it its own flair, and I really appreciated that. It does a good job sort of adding more context to the character of her, and also showing that how much of being a part of the Avengers has improved her character and given her such an importance and a love for people, and given her such empathy for people, and she's able to sympathize with all different types of backgrounds. But something else I love about this movie is the family dynamic, because she is going back to confront her past. She's also coming in contact with her family for the first time in many, many years, because she's got a very, very strong connection with them that has been lost, and that they didn't end things off on the best note, because they obviously, everything we know from her past and the history of her character within the Red Room, her and her sister were experimented on. They were trained to be these killers, these super spies that were able to do all these things and complete these tasking missions. But now she sort of went away from that. She's on a new chapter of life, and all this stuff that she thought she had settled is now coming back to haunt her, and that means reuniting with her family. And the family here is great. This is by far my favorite part of the movie, because everything about their chemistry works so well. It's something about it that is very charismatic. They can tend to have a sarcastic sense of humor, and you can tell that they have known each other for their entire lifetime, and the way that that is written and the way that it's incorporated works very well. But I also think that is attributed to the performances given. Scarlett Johansson is great, but I almost think she's overshadowed here just from all of the talent involved, in particular David Harbour and the star of the movie, Florence Pugh. I definitely think in a lot of ways this is a movie to set up their characters. I don't see them being done after this movie, but their introduction and the way that they were utilized in the movie really give you a lot to love here, and they make them these characters that you're going to latch onto, and they could become universe and franchise favorites. In particular, Florence Pugh. Scarlett Johansson gives a great performance, but Florence Pugh is on another level here. And that's not a bad thing. It just shows how great of performers all of these people are. But I also love David Harbour because he's playing this deadbeat father who has made a lot of bad decisions. He's way past his prime. He's got this dream and vision for himself to become something so high and mighty that he can't see himself being anything less. And in that, he sort of overshadows what's actually important. There's a lot of interesting dynamics there, but I'm serious. Some of the best parts of this movie were the intimate moments when they're sitting down at a table having dinner together and they're confronting their dysfunctional family dynamic, because it's very all over the place. It's interesting. You've not seen anything like this before. It's good to see. I feel like it was very well written. The action here is some of the most exciting we've seen in the MCU in quite some time. It definitely throws it back to that 2014 MCU era. It's very well choreographed, well shot. Everything that you need to see is in the frame, and it's just bonkers. It goes to these insane levels, and they pull off these stunts that are so just gravity defying, and at points it's like, okay, you might as well believe that Scarlett Johansson does have superpowers, because she's literally doing these aerial stunts and fights while falling from a helicopter. It's crazy. It's insane, but it all works so well. It's very raw and brutal, and I loved it. I've been waiting to see something like that in the MCU for a long time now. Captain America the Winter Soldier, what it was able to pull off was very impressive. It definitely gave a different tone and approach to the style of the universe that we had never seen before, and I feel like this is the first film to really go back to those roots. I will say that the biggest hindrance of this movie from being better than it was is that I just feel like it didn't have any sort of impact. It did further the character of Scarlett Johansson, sort of being able to show how she's really grown as a person through being a part of the Avengers, and how her past doesn't haunt her anymore. It doesn't define who she is currently. But I also feel like this movie is so stuck in the past that it doesn't have any room for growth, and it doesn't really bring anything new to the table. This is definitely a movie that could have come out in between Captain America Civil War and Avengers Infinity War. That's the storyline that it takes place in. And there's no expansion from that. There's nothing that leads into current day. There's nothing that really dwells upon the impact of her loss in Avengers Endgame. It very much feels like a piece that was relevant to that time and that time only. And in retrospect, I don't think that that makes it any less enjoyable. I just feel like it would have been so much more impactful if it was inserted right there in between those two films that it was meant to be set in. If it was set in and released in that time that it was actually relevant to. But it also would have made her end and her journey's conclusion in Avengers Endgame that much more impactful. But on the other hand, if they would have made it back then, I don't know that we would have gotten the talents of Florence Pugh and David Harbour to help in carrying this movie as well as they did. So that's one thing that you have to look at. We could have gotten somebody else in these roles that may not have worked as well as these two do, because they definitely feel like they fit so perfectly. I definitely feel like this movie was more so set in place to introduce these characters to carry out later installments of the franchise and the universe in phase 4, whether television shows or whatever. Florence Pugh is already confirmed for Hawkeye, so I feel like this was an establishment and a foundation to sort of launch her career into the MCU. But other than that, I don't feel like it had much of an impact. I also don't think that the villains were that menacing. I don't think that their motives were that extremely clear. I think some of that was a bit convoluted, overindulgent. They just sort of threw a lot at the wall and just wanted to see what would stick. not all of it did. Taskmaster is a character and a villain that I was very much looking forward to, just because the idea that it can mimic all of the moves and abilities of all these other heroes. I felt like they were a little bit underutilized. I don't think that they were used in the best way that they possibly could have been, and actually were sort of overshadowed. At the end of the day, I didn't even necessarily feel any sort of impact for that character whatsoever. I think there is a bigger villain here at play than the Taskmaster, and they're carrying out a plan that is very menacing and evil, but then again, you know before the end of it that it's going to end in the good guys' favor, just because of how the story progresses after that point. We know that whatever is going to happen here, it's going to be soft. It's going to come to a conclusion that is satisfying, because it doesn't have anything to do, it doesn't have any connections with Infinity War, with Endgame, with any of those films. It's just there. It's a one-off adventure. That's good on some parts, but it's also sort of underwhelming. But overall, Black Widow was loads of fun. I think it has plenty of great moments while being a one-off adventure that doesn't necessarily serve a ton of impact to the rest of the universe moving forward, but it gives us plenty to look back on and enjoy, and I think this will be a nice addition to your chronological MCU rewatches. Scarlett Johansson gives her best performance as the character here. Florence Pugh becomes a new franchise regular who proves her worth and shows just how well she's going to fit into this franchise. It's got heavy hitting action, a lot of great character moments, and satisfying moments for fans of the franchise, fans of Black Widow, but it also doesn't necessarily have the best send-off for Black Widow's character, so some fans of her character could be a bit underwhelmed. It's not without its faults. Sadly, it does suffer some pretty rough script issues when it comes to the villain, when it comes to just its purpose overall, and how it's able to fit inside the guidelines, even though we know the overall conclusion of the story. But with that being said, it's probably mid-tier MCU for me. I enjoyed it. The more I think about it, the more I'm itching to see it on a big screen and rewatch it. It's not bad at all, and I definitely recommend you checking it out. But with all that being said, I'm gonna have to give Black Widow an 8 out of 10. While having sort of an odd release date and an odd place in the timeline, I definitely still believe that this is one that you guys should check out, and I'm sure you will enjoy. But like I said, make sure to comment down below. Let me know your thoughts once you've seen the movie, and also tell me, are you going to watch this on Disney Plus Premier Access, or are you going to catch this one on the big screen? I'd love to know. Also, if you would, make sure to leave a like on the video and subscribe if you haven't already, and make sure to turn on the bell notification to get notified every time I post a new video. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for the support, and I'll see y'all next time. Peace out.